As you said, it has been a historic year at the Department of War. Recruiting and retention over this year are at the most historic levels our country has ever seen. I had a chance to be on an aircraft carrier destroyer over Thanksgiving. The spirit in our ranks since the election under President Trump is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it as a soldier myself in uniform, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. We've ripped out the DEI and the political correctness. It's all merit-based at the department. We're getting back to basics: accountability, training, readiness, lethality, and that's reviving that spirit. President, we're rebuilding the military, historic investments. I just took briefings on the Golden Dome and F-47, next generation capabilities that are going to make sure that for generations to come, America has the most powerful, most capable, most lethal military in the world, which you have rebuilt once and we're rebuilding again. And then we're reestablishing deterrence and credibility. If you look at what happened, we deal with every day the outcome of what happened in Afghanistan, the debacle under Joe Biden. We just dealt with it in the streets of Washington, D.C. with those two National Guardsmen. And then what happened on October 7th with Hamas, what happened in Ukraine, a war that never would have started under President Trump, we're having to rebuild that. So whether it's freedom of navigation and taking the fight to the Houthis, whether it's Midnight Hammer, those beautiful B-2s going 37 hours back and forth, undetected, delivering with precision, and Iran not getting nuclear capabilities, Europe and NATO stepping up to 5%, locking down our southwest border. It's been an honor to work with Christy and Tom and everyone else down there to lock it to zero, operational control of our border. And then it's getting after and going after narco-terrorists and designated terrorist organizations in our own hemisphere.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has backed one of his top admirals after strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats, otherwise known as narco boats. The vision of the incident, which shows a strike targeting a burning vessel carrying two people who survived an initial strike. The footage raised questions over the legality of the strikes because there were survivors in the initial strike and then there was another one to take them out. Well, on Monday, the White House defended Admiral Frank Bradley, claiming the strikes which killed 11 people were authorised by the Secretary of War. Pete Hegseth says strikes on alleged drug trafficking vessels will continue. He said that this morning.
We've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco-terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves and allowed them to come across the border. Cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations.
More than 80 people have been killed in the Caribbean since September across at least 19 different strikes. Because of these talks, Donald Trump has again brought up the Nobel Peace Prize when asked this morning.
Every time I end a war, they say if President Trump ends that war, he's going to get the Nobel Prize. If I end that war, well, he won't get it for that war, but if he ever gets it for the next war, now they're saying if he ever ends the war with Russia and Ukraine, he's going to get the Nobel Prize. What about the other 8 wars? India, Pakistan. Think of all the wars I ended. I should get the Nobel Prize for every war, but I don't want to be greedy.
Well, at that cabinet meeting this morning, US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth defended one of his top admirals after strikes on an alleged drug trafficking boat that some members of Congress likened to war crimes. On September 2, a boat suspected of smuggling drugs was taken out in the Caribbean Sea. However, there were 2 survivors. Those survivors were killed by a follow-up strike, which led to claims of a war crime. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth strongly denied that he authorised the second strike, which was given by Admiral Frank Bradley.
Who's on it, what they're doing, what they're carrying, all these white bales are not Christmas gifts from Santa. This is drugs running on four-motor fast boats or submarines that we've also struck. No one's fishing on a submarine. And by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back, and the American people are safer.
Sitting to his right there, President Trump backed in his War Department.
Every boat that you see get blown up, we save 25,000 on average lives. 25,000 lives. They've been sending enough of this horrible fentanyl and other things like cocaine and other things, but fentanyl right now is the leader of the pack, to kill our entire nation. I want those boats taken out, and if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea.
80 people have so far been killed in the Caribbean since September across multiple strikes, about 19 of them. And the War Secretary said this morning, those strikes will continue.
That said, it seems there was a second strike. I mean, the White House spokesman seemed to confirm it. Whoever ordered it, how do you feel about it?
So that's the question, right? And I say this because the nuance matters. So here's why that matters. If the commander who ordered that second strike knew that there were, unarmed civilians that had survived a strike, to fire on them specifically would be problematic. However, if the commander was doing something more broader, taking out an existential second threat of which they were collateral damage, that is a very different scenario. So the context of which the second strike was ordered does matter. And like I said, right now we're hearing all of this through anonymous sources from the Washington Post. I think that what happened, who ordered it, why they ordered it, and the context will be critical to understanding whether or not this was some kind of real issue, or whether this was collateral damage. But there's a lot more to this than what initially met the eye.
Well, I agree that we need to know more details. But if the claim is correct, and it's a big if, as you're suggesting too, two survivors hanging off the side of a burning boat and they get hit again, that doesn't seem to me taking out someone who represents an existential threat.
Yeah, look, I've been in the room with the President of the United States during a strike, right? I can't go into obvious specific details, but I'm just telling you, the way the Washington Post portrayed this is not an actual representation of how a strike would go down in terms of the role of the secretary. And so I immediately questioned the accuracy of the reporting. The second question that you asked is really what needs to get further investigated. What caused a second strike? What was the intent of that second strike? What was the target of that second strike, and why was it ordered? But there's a big range in there that stem from a problematic answer that is, well, they were taking out survivors of the first strike, to there was collateral issues that needed to be addressed in a second strike, and they were just further damage. Those are very, very different scenarios that have a big different impact on how we view this situation. So I like I said, just the mere initial reporting from the Washington Post gave me pause.
I think you're correct to raise a red flag there. I mean, is the Secretary of War really standing by the shoulder of the person pushing the buttons saying, no, go again? I doubt that too.